Hey there, listeners, and welcome back to Fear and Flame Podcast. I'm Brooklyn.
I'm Mason.
What?
And today we're covering Fire Within. So strike a match, light a candle, and settle in. This one is sure to ignite some fear.
Get it? Get it?
So,
Ignite.
just like last time, I had a difficult time trying to find a fictional story for today's episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, our friend ChatGPT is going to help us.
Wonderful.
Again.
Nice.
Welcome back.
They
bud.
knocked it out of the park on the last
It was a good. That was a really. That's still my favorite one so far. So I'm
All
excited.
right. The house was calm. Too calm. I could hear the faint sound of a lawnmower outside as my husband worked on the garden. The warm scent of cookies baking in the oven and the occasional murmur of a car passing by. The baby was in the living room playing quietly with his toys. I was just finishing up the last batch of cookies when I heard it. The faintest crackle, like the sound of paper burning. My first instinct was to ignore it, thinking it was just the house settling. But then came another noise. Louder this time, like something snapping in half. And then I saw it. I turned just in time to see the room go from normal to something out of a nightmare. My heart skipped a beat as the air around him shimmered with heat. The toys I'd been playing with were suddenly sparked into flames on the ground. Flames that shot up as though they were alive. It was like the world had caught fire in an instant, and at the center of it, my child. I froze.
That's tough, buddy.
ChatGPT went for the throat on this one.
Man. All right.
All right. I froze, eyes wide, unable to process what was happening. My little boy, my sweet, innocent boy, was surrounded by fire. His small hands flailed in the air, his chubby cheeks flushed, and a wail slipped from his mouth, a sound of pure confusion and fear.
Dude, this is. What are we.
That's-
This is dark. Quick. All right.
oh boy.
I rushed toward him without thinking, but the heat was unbearable. The flames were so close that I could feel the singeing warmth searing at my skin. I screamed his name, instinctively reaching for him, but my hands couldn't get near without burning. "No!" I yelled, my voice a mix of terror and disbelief. The fire was spreading too fast, too violently, and I could barely make out his face in the haze of orange and red. What was happening? How? I couldn't stop it, couldn't control it. I felt so utterly helpless, the mother in me desperate to save him, but unable to do a thing. I backed away, eyes wide, my heart thumping in my chest like a drum. Calm down, please, I whispered to myself, trying to make sense of it, trying to breathe through the panic that was clawing at me. Then, just as abruptly as it had started, it was over. The fire flickered out like a light turning off, leaving only the smell of smoke in the air. Everything was still. The toys, now blackened and charred, littered the floor. The air felt heavy, as if the room itself had been holding its breath. I stood there trembling, staring at my son. He was still sitting there, completely unharmed, his eyes wide with confusion as he looked around. He let out a tiny giggle, his little hands clapping together like he was pleased with himself, as though nothing had just happened. I wanted to pull him into my arms, to hug him, but I couldn't move. My legs were shaking and my chest felt tight. How had he survived that? Was that even possible? My mind raced through a million thoughts, trying to understand what I had just seen. I forced myself to kneel beside him, my hands shaking as I reached out to him. "Are you okay?" I whispered, barely able to get the words out. He smiled as though nothing had changed, and I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and fear. He was fine. But what had just happened? What had he just done? I gathered him into my arms, holding him close, as if I could shield him from whatever this was. He squirmed a little, wanting to go back to playing, completely oblivious to the danger that had just surrounded him. As I held him, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. We had to figure out what was happening, but how? How do you stop something that you don't understand? How do you protect your child when the danger comes from within him? The question burned in my mind. My heart still raced with fear. And deep down, I knew nothing would ever be the same again for my little Jack.
Oh my God.
What
No,
the-
I thought it too.
Why?
I thought it the whole time. I was like I was trying to find a good moment to say, I was going to wait for the end. Is this just like Incredibles fanfic? Jack was running through my mind the whole time.
I was wondering where it was going. I was like, nightmare, fever dream. I did not think
I literally, the whole time I was like, this feels like a Jack B plot storyline in an Incredibles movie.
So, if you guys haven't already, you should watch The Incredibles.
Yeah, it's great movies, both of them.
But whenever I think about our topic, spontaneous human combustion, I think of Jack. We're going to start calling it SHC just because spontaneous human combustion is kind of long. So SHC is believed to be when a human body bursts into flames, but from the inside. No external factors causing ignition. Many cases throughout time have been thought to be the result of SHC. Although current scientific findings cannot confirm, many argue it to be fact over fiction. The typical commonalities between cases seem to be that a portion of the body is burned to ash, while the extremities and surrounding environment are not typically affected or not as much so. Things like alcoholism, smoking, age, and gender are sometimes seen as to be related. A lot of the time, it's older women is what they like to think.
So witches. Okay.
Older women who tend to like smoke or drink, but that's not true in all cases because there's a lot of different people that are affected.
So what's
But
their
brief
thoughts on
overview.
that? Just the alcoholics so chock full of a flammable liquid, and older women going through hot flashes. And
And then it just...
it's just a deadly combination.
I think
or-
it's the drinking and then adding the flame to
they
it.
just kind of does it. I've never... So, I'm going to be honest going into this. I don't even know... I don't know if it's real. I don't think it is. Because I've never actually heard of a confirmed case of... But I don't know.
So there's over 200 cases.
Okay.
I don't know if all of them are like written on people's death certificates. Like, I don't know if it's all of those are written on people's death certificates, but there are some that SHC is written as the cause
listed
of
as
death.
the cause of death.
Yeah, which is wild. Which I'm sure it was probably more back then than it is today, like in modern times. But there are people who have been listed to have.
And I
died from it.
wonder... So, I wonder if it's just a unknown condition. Like, some, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that people could just like catch on fire.
It's pretty crazy.
It's nuts.
Definitely. I know. I remember seeing an episode, one of the like unsolved mystery shows. As a kid, I remember watching an episode on it, but it's been so long, I don't know any of the facts or anything anymore. But it was something that always kind of definitely piqued my interest a little bit.
Yeah.
There are
'cause
theories.
It's just so out of this world.
Yeah.
It seems like.
There are some theories that we'll talk about at the end that are really interesting.
Can I give my theory? Or
Yeah. Yeah, let's hear it.
I wonder if it's just like, so you know how you have a gallbladder? I wonder if it's related to that. Of
To
how it
the gallbladder?
explodes and it just...
When
You know.
But it's just your whole
Yeah.
body. What about the flame, though?
I don't know. I can't
Okay.
answer that. But that's my first thought, is that maybe it's just like, especially since like we're talking like early times, people had no idea. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But my first thought is maybe back in like the 1500s or whatever, they didn't know what a gallbladder was. And so, you know, it would just explode and eat away at things. And then when they cut you open to see what went wrong, they just saw a bunch of melted, like...
Insides.
Yeah, is my first thought. But I have no idea.
I'm
So I'll be
We'll
interested
get
to find
into
out.
some of the cases so you can actually see, like, what the bodies end up looking like afterwards.
Okay. I'm excited.
All right.
So I started in, like, the very beginning. So some of the first cases that have been documented. Actually, this is the first case that was documented. 1470. So the year it occurred was 1470, but the theory, and it wasn't documented until 1641. So a knight by the name of Polonius Vorstius was at his family home in Milan, Italy. Along with his parents, Vorstius began to drink some very strong wine. Kind of like the stuff that you could find in Papa's cellar. After consumption, the wine in some way or another came back up. Some people say he was like throwing up the wine. I don't know. But it came back up.
Brother couldn't hold the liquor.
Except in the form of flames. So it came out as flames, like almost like picture a dragon.
That's
That's
pretty cool.
what it was seen to be. As
I'd
you
love
can
to die like
imagine, it was not
That'd
good.
be, that'd be sick.
It wasn't good because he burst into fire and then died.
Yeah.
And he was the first ever victim documented with the theory of spontaneous human combustion.
I'm sure that guy's life was awesome, dude. This
Yeah.
brother was
I mean,
a
he
knight,
was a knight
Yeah.
and he sit there and he's partying. He goes out partying, breathing fire.
with his
Yeah.
parents. He's partying
Yeah.
with his parents.
Sick.
I wouldn't know anybody cool to
Yeah,
party with.
I mean, shoot, son. Oh, man.
So that was the first ever one, and then that's where the theory arises. So once the theory was made, then more and more cases started showing up.
Mm-hmm.
So after that one, there's another earlier case of that in an innkeeper in Italy. So this is also kind of Italy, that area over there. This was around the year of 1725. While having been asleep, the man was suddenly awoken by the smell of smoke. Remember, Mason, there were no smoke alarms at this time.
Yeah. Okay.
After searching for the cause, the innkeeper saw that his wife was mostly ash. Aside from her skull and a few back and leg bones, is all gone. Just
Suboptimal.
complete, incinerated. Her body had been on top of a straw pallet and wooden items from around their home near her. Nothing had any damage present, except for her body. The straw that she was laying on top of, and none of the, furniture or anything around her was burned. So, initially, the husband was found guilty and charged for her murder.
Mm-hmm.
People speculated that he was sleeping with a maid and was trying to get rid of his wife.
Mm-hmm.
However, the case was reopened on an appeal due to a doctor who was actually a surgeon who had been in the inn that same night testifying with his defense that it was spontaneous human combustion. So a surgeon that was staying there at the inn the same night that guy's wife became ash was like, I'll root for him. It actually was spontaneous human combustion. So from there on out, her death was then declared as a consequence of a visitation of God, possibly due to her being known as a chronic alcoholic.
So this one's alcohol. Okay.
There seems to be a lot of alcohol tied into the...
I wonder why somebody's first thought to off their wife would be lighting them on fire.
That's an interesting method,
I wouldn't use that.
Definitely if
Personally.
she's
I think
laying
that-
on
yeah.
a bed of straw. And,
I think that
in a
there's
wooden inn.
in your inn that you
if
own.
you own that inn, too,
Yeah.
that's your
Yeah.
money.
So
they didn't have insurance back then, so he wasn't trying to claim anything.
I would have a really hard time believing that that's the method if he was gonna kill his wife that he'd
Yeah.
use. But also, I feel like that just some guy like a surgeon. What year is this?
This one was in 1725.
Okay, so this is just like I'm gonna be honest. Any medical professional back then was just some guy.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest.
Well, he's probably some guy that's probably
Yeah.
dissected a few bodies. and
Yeah,
stuff.
he's
Yeah.
cut open a few guys.
You have experience, hands-on
Yeah.
experience.
But I have a hard time believing a diagnosis from a 1700s doctor. I could be wrong.
just listening to a surgeon come in,
Yeah.
they reopen a case, and the guy's like,
And it's like, yeah,
actually, I think it was
she must have
the-"
just lit on fire from the inside, of
and,
course.
and they were like, oh, we'll take his word for it.
Yes. Ah, of
It is
course.
interesting. But hopefully the guy actually was innocent. He didn't kill his wife, and he got out of jail, so.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Never
I
know.
guess. I mean,
Yeah.
dude pulled an OJ, all right? He got out.
The glove
Go,
didn't fit.
it didn't fit.
See the straw? Do you see the straw?
It's not lit. If it's not lit, you must acquit. All right?
1885. We have a case that occurred on Christmas Eve in Seneca, Illinois. I think that's how you pronounce it. I could be wrong.
Seneca.
Yeah, Seneca, Illinois. At the home of Matilda and Patrick Rooney. The farmhand, John Larson, stayed with the couple for the night. Feeling the Christmas spirit, they had some drinks. I believe it was whiskey that they had. I can't remember for sure. But before Larson went up to stairs to go to sleep, Matilda had been alone in the kitchen, and Patrick was in the couple's room. So her husband was in their bedroom, and she was in the kitchen. In the middle of the night, the farmhand woke up due to a coughing fit, having a difficult time breathing. However, he managed to fall back asleep, but when he woke up in the morning, it was to a horrific scene. He supposedly had soot on his pillow, so he made his way downstairs to first find Patrick. Patrick was in the couple's bedroom and had passed away. Matilda was not with him. When Larson went into the kitchen, he saw a huge charred hole in the floor, looking to have ash and what remained of Mrs. Rooney's feet. Upon investigation, law enforcement found other bones along with Matilda's feet left in the area. It was believed that Matilda died of spontaneous combustion and Patrick of smoke inhalation. So the husband had no sign of burning or anything on his body.
He just
They
died
think he
'cause of
died
the-
from inhaling the smoke. They considered Larson to be a possible suspect to the farmhand, which, I mean, obviously they're going to think of him as the first suspect, but did not think that he could cause such a contained fire. So since it only burned the floor like where her body was and nothing in the house burned, they're like, we don't really know how he could do that.
That is weird.
Very odd. So once they considered that, they had no other apparent motive for him, and investigators had reason to believe that he had stayed upstairs for the entire night. Larson soon died 2 weeks after the incident, also due to lung damage. So everything he breathed in, it was a couple weeks later, and then he died too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Which I do think it's odd that he would have sat on his pillow. I don't know how that would have happened upstairs.
Yeah,
and maybe the source that I read was incorrect about that, but it was just a note in there. Theories...
I don't know, man. Sorry, but
No,
I just think
good.
that it's just so weird to me that it happens so often. I say so often, but like at least 200 times. You said right.
Yeah.
Like back 200-300 years ago, but it hasn't happened since.
Well, there is a couple.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll go into.
Well, that's all right. Well, let me hold that thought.
Yeah, one of the cases that I remember was newer.
Let's get it.
So, after Larson had died, theories surrounded what could have caused Matilda to burst into flames. Whether it be spontaneous human combustion, coming in contact with a candle or another heat form, or divine punishment for excessive alcohol consumption on Christmas Eve. It remains a mystery. A lot of people, it's crazy the amount of people who were like,
straight to the it's
punishment.
Yes.
God definitely made them explode because of drinking on Christmas Eve or drinking in general.
Yeah.
Which is so
so
crazy
far
to
that's
think.
every case has been they were drinking, right?
Yeah.
So far.
That seems to be a pretty
and God
heavy
hates
link
that.
there.
So they better.
Even though Jesus drank wine, but
Naughty.
Anyway, that it's just funny that they all tie it back to they're like, well, they did something wrong, they're punished. So almost seems like SHC is just a logo for don't smoke, don't drink, and make sure to pray before you go to sleep. So one of the most well-known cases happened in St. Petersburg, Florida. This might be one that you're familiar with, Wyatt. Mary Reeser was having an evening in after her son had been by to visit. She was already in her nightgown and slippers, making her way into her armchair. She had taken 2 sleeping pills and was going to have a cigarette before ending her night. The next day, the landlady had come to deliver Mary a telegram. Before touching the doorknob, she realized the door felt warm and immediately called responders. Firefighters and policemen made it onto the scene to find Mary's remains. All that was left was a backbone, left foot with the slipper, so you could still see the flesh on the left foot with the slipper, and then a shrunken skull. In the rubble, including springs of the armchair. So there's also springs from her armchair. The area where she had burned showed signs of extreme heat, but nothing in the rest of the house was affected. Investigators said most likely cause was that her nightgown caught an ash from her cigarette, and that the adipose or fatty tissue fueling the flames. So like her body fat fueled the flames. An anthropologist from the University of Pennsylvania disagreed, saying that in order to have a cremation to that extent, you would have to have a very intense temperature that would have affected the apartment and would have had much more damage. As well as her skull most likely would have exploded rather than shrunken like it did.
Which makes... Because I don't think humans are very flammable. I could be wrong.
I guess the only part that I could think of would be like your fat.
Yeah.
But you still wouldn't think that our fat is like extremely flammable in that sense.
But even then, if it's like they said, if it was the nightgown, they just got to get through the skin first. And the skin's pretty dead
Pretty tough.
Yeah. So I'd be surprised too if it was literally just like her nightgown caught alight and she burst into complete flames. That's a little...
Definitely
it's
not.
also interesting, which I don't know, whenever things get to a certain temperature, like so hot that they're never able to find signs of an accelerant. But most of these cases, every single one of them, they're like, there were no signs of an accelerant.
Well, it sounds like that if it was hot enough, I mean, if you get things hot enough, generally, they burst into flames. Like, it just, they start combusting on their own. So it couldn't be that hot if these places aren't
catching on fire.
Yeah,
you wouldn't think.
That's the curious part about it is how little damage there is to stuff in the area, and the missing like bone and stuff like that. That would take extreme heats to get rid of.
Yeah, but then everything else is
Everything's fine.
That's
Especially
I
the
think
straw
the
bed.
most unsettling thing about it is like how is it just the body and like the one piece of furniture they were in, or literally just their body
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
is what's been destroyed or cremated and nothing else. The
Yeah.
whole house is. I mean, there's probably soot and things like on the walls possibly, but
Because everything else, you could just be, oh, well, like, you know, the room caught on fire. Like, yeah, they burned with it.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't, like, the only reason then why we're even having this conversation is because nothing else was affected. But,
Yeah.
you know,
mm-hmm.
which is wild if something literally burnt away your entire,
It's
all
also
your
odd
flesh.
that some of them, it is the extremities that are left. So, like just their hands or just their feet or their head or whatever. To have everything gone except for 1 foot in the house
That's-
slipper still, and
Yeah,
their
it's-
flesh, like their tissue, is still there.
Yeah.
It's like it happened like so aggressively, like a couple seconds and it was over.
Yeah.
Is what it seems like.
And then without even affecting the extremities of, like, your hands or your whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, almost a,
Just torso.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a chain reaction that just stopped at the foot or something like that.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. So this next one is one that is more modern, more current. This is about a baby in India in 2013. The baby's name was Rahul, I think is how you pronounce it. It was said to have mysteriously caught flames 4 times up until the age of 3 months. So he had been taken to local healthcare facilities until the 4th time, where he suffered extreme burns and was taken to a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
The baby did survive. So I think that's the craziest part, is if it happened 4 times and the baby still survived. Healthcare providers and authorities tried to figure out the cause of the burns. So they tested the baby for medical conditions or anything that could be related. They also looked into parents possibly doing child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that was looked into. The baby was supposed to be in authorities or whoever, Child Protective Services, some type, whatever their form is in India, like holding on to the baby to make sure it was okay. Most claimed that the child suffered from SHC or spontaneous human combustion. I saw a thing talking about the areas where they lived and that they used cow manure to make their houses, and people were like, oh, that's an accelerant, or it could be an accelerant, but they went into scientific reasons as to why that wasn't enough to cause something like this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, considering they couldn't determine any external ignition factors, they just said it's probably SHC.
So what's weird about that to me, though, is that every other case has been so extreme. Maybe it's because that it's like a little small baby, but it seems like every other case has been to the extremity of like literally, like it's burning away your flesh
Yeah,
and
like
bone.
almost like you're doused in thermite or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
White phosphorus, where it's just such an aggressive hot.
Well-
And then this kid has burst into flames 3 or 4 times.
And just has burns, which is
Yeah.
weird.
So after reading about this, I tried to find anything I could on that case.
Mm-hmm.
There was never any updates made. So I kind of wonder if it was fake. Because I never could find anything
Yeah.
else. Which that doesn't mean that it was, but I could never find anything else.
And so this story I doubt the most so far, because I'm also thinking if it was a internal fire or flame or just source of heat, if it got to the point where it made burns on the outside of their skin, like visible skin,
more than likely you would assume the person would be deceased.
yes, like
If the-
internal
yeah,
organs have
if it's
been.
going from inside to out, and in your skin on your outside is burnt, then yeah, it would have to. You'd think it would have had to kill.
Yeah.
the
Some
kid.
stuff inside's melted. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So that one I'm the most. I think if
Leery
you're gonna
about.
burst into flames on the inside, I think you're going up.
yeah.
You know,
Like
so
you're
But
done.
the thing about it being a child and the maybe that does have a factor to play in what's going on in the mass. You know how much organic material is there, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's curious.
It sounds silly, but I did look up when The Incredibles was made compared to when that case happened, just to
Like
make
right
sure there
after.
wasn't a correlation, that it wasn't like connected somehow. And The Incredibles came out way before 2013, so
Yeah.
I don't think it was related. But I was like, what if this is like a publicity thing? Like, that's terrible. I mean,
Trying
think
to
that,
ride
but
the coattails.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
That's pretty terrible. But since I'd already thought of Jack, and then I read this story, I was like, well, I'm definitely gonna have to use The Incredibles as my opener.
Yeah.
I'm so mad I didn't say nothing. It's all right.
Sure, Mason. Sure, you thought
I
it was The
did, dude.
Incredibles.
Oh
I'm
my
sure you
God.
did. So this is my last case that we'll talk about, and this is actually one of Oklahoma's own.
Oh
Really?
yeah.
There
And
we
this
go.
one happened. I didn't put the year down. I don't think it was within the last probably 10 years. It had to be within the last 10
Okay.
years. A man in his 60s by the name of Danny Van Zant was found in his kitchen in the town of Muldrow.
Muldrow. Been
Yes.
through there a few times.
Yeah.
Really, I don't know if I've ever been there, but for some reason when I was looking at the news thing, it made his house look so familiar. But it's also probably what
Yeah.
every other house in
Yeah.
Oklahoma looks like. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not much variety.
Yeah.
So he was found in his kitchen, completely ash, other than his head, hands, and feet. So his head, hands, and feet were all that remained.
Yep,
The
just
only
extremities.
the only damage caused to the house was the kitchen floor where his body was discovered.
So basically the same as that one gal before, where she
Kind
just
of.
lit up.
Yes. The county sheriff is even recounted saying, this is a quote for him, "This house is intact. There is a stove and icebox within 3 feet from where the body's burning, and the handles are not melted. You could pour gasoline on someone, and he wouldn't be as badly incinerated." The sheriff said you could pour gasoline on someone, and they would not be as incinerated as this guy.
Yeah, that's the really interesting part is how destroyed the organics of the body are. Because of normal fires and stuff like that, it has to be hot and stay hot for a long time to burn up a body.
And
Yeah.
how does that not destroy other things in the house?
Yeah, that amount of heat. That is weird. And then also, I feel like that this would be a new enough story that you could definitely get like a fire marshal's opinion on it too.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. I don't know, maybe that's out there, but yeah, I don't know. Like you said, the amount of heat required to just incinerate a body is ridiculous, and the fact that it's not affecting.
Literally
the
3
area
feet.
around
Yeah.
it.
He said
It's
that
ridiculous.
3 feet from the stove and the icebox, and nothing was affected. Like
It doesn't
the
make
handles
sense.
weren't melted or anything. Even though Van Zant was confirmed to drink alcohol and smoke, it was not believed that the scene was consistent with any type of accelerant at all whatsoever. They did not rule spontaneous combustion out as a possibility. They literally said, we're not going to rule that out. So, according to the report filed later on, his death was listed as natural
Really?
because the medical examiner determined he had passed before catching on fire. So they think he had some heart condition, maybe a heart attack or something, and then burst
Yeah.
into flames. But
And
the interesting thing is a lot of these cases, if you look into like a little bit further in, a lot of people believe that they had died from natural causes
And
or
then the
something
body
else,
burst.
and then the body burst into flames.
Something in the breaking down of the body,
I don't know.
build up of
You know what?
gases or a chemical change or something causes
That
it.
wouldn't be. That's not crazy to say. I don't think.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's not gallbladder related. I think.
Actually, could be it's the gallbladder breaking
You know,
down
maybe.
after the body
Maybe.
dies.
What's odd too is how do they get the fact? Like, how would they know that it was a heart attack if we've got like his hands and feet
I
left
don't know.
after? That's a
Maybe-
little odd.
They
Uh,
just,
it'd be
I think
hard.
it
But-
just
It'd
was
be
that
hard
he
to
had
guess.
underlying conditions, probably.
Yeah.
And so they're like, he probably passed away before. I don't know how they would determine that, though, with
Yeah.
what was left of the
And
body.
then alcohol being involved in pretty much every story makes me think too, because alcohol itself is flammable. You know,
So,
it's an accelerant.
interesting enough, I don't know if I go into this a little bit, but alcohol becomes, I think, can become acetone in the body, which is
Yeah.
extremely flammable.
It does. Yeah, I've heard that.
So maybe it's something with the body's not breaking the alcohol down the way it should, or maybe alcoholics after the liver and kidneys and everything have become shot. Maybe the way the body is dealing with it isn't appropriate, and it's allowing the acetate or acetone to build up.
It's very
interesting.
odd.
But how hot does an acetone fire get? Does it get hot enough to where it could?
Acetone, I'm sure, burns fairly hot, But
Still
still,
to do that.
It's
Yeah.
weird to think.
And just, I don't know, man. Because if you've got a fire, because we're assuming that if it was just the insides were burnt up, then I could totally believe that nothing else was affected. But the fact that the body is like burnt and gone, the fire was out in the open at some point. It had to have been. And so the fact that nothing else is affected in most of these stories is wacky. I can't wrap my head around that.
And the not finding evidence of an accelerant is odd too.
It is very odd. Which maybe is hot enough to burn everything up of proof of the accelerant, but still. It's just interesting. I liked that sheriff was like, if you poured gasoline on someone, it would not do the damage that this is. Like,
because I feel like the gasoline fire, and I'm not an expert or anything, but I think if you, like, I don't think that it burns you up to the point to where you're gone. Like things you're gonna be burnt bad. You may be charred, but you're not gonna be.
No, you wouldn't think all of the organs and the bone is gone.
Yes.
Yeah. Bone, I think especially is pretty.
it's very.
It's
dense.
probably gotta get pretty dead gum hot.
Pretty hardy. Yeah, I think crematoriums
Still
end up
sometimes
grinding
have-
the bone.
Sometimes they still have
I
bone
think they
left
have
over.
to grind the bone.
Yeah. So the fact that you're talking
Some
a
of these
furnace,
fires are hotter than what they have at cremations.
Yeah.
and then the dead gum plastic crap that's or a.
That's 3 feet away.
Yeah, or like we said earlier, a dead gum.
Pile of straw.
Yeah, a straw bed was just chilling.
That's insane to me.
So,
Which that is a very old story. So who knows? But
no, that could be total BS. So I don't.
Yeah, it's
the
hard
interesting thing too is all the stories that I listed were people inside, but there are cases of people outside
I
in the
remember,
open.
Yeah, the show that I watched, there was one of the cases they went over was someone that was on
In the street
a
or
side
something.
street
Yep.
in a town. Yeah.
And burned. I think I saw that. It might have been an Irish. There was one, I think, in Ireland or somewhere possibly. There's a very old one about a lady dancing with. I was telling White about this, but she's dancing with her fiance at some type of ball or something, and she combusts, and everyone watches her.
Just light.
I mean, there's nothing they could do. Yeah, like just burn.
That's so weird. Maybe some of the outside ones, maybe you could argue would be like maybe it's a lightning strike or maybe it's
Something,
yeah, but I don't know. The only ones that I could truly believe, honestly, are ones that happened in the last century or two. You know what I mean? Because
after the dawn of technology, the stuff is almost a little easier to trust, which is hard to say. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things faked and stuff, but yeah, I agree. And I mean, our record keeping and stuff has improved so much since the 1700s.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, is 1700s, you could just lie.
Yeah.
You could just, you and two
I
or
feel like
three
you
other
talk about
guys.
this all the time.
Yeah,
You're like,
could just
man, you could just literally do whatever
Seriously.
you want.
Whatever
Just-
you want.
Yeah, if you got three dudes to be like, yeah, no, that sounds right.
Just like
you're
the guy with the surgeon. What if the surgeon was his bestie?
yeah,
Could've been.
you get off pretty easy. I feel
Said,
like
man, you're
the
of
room
high
is free
standard.
if you tell my wife lit on fire, and not that I poisoned her.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's crazy.
so I don't know.
Well, do you guys want to go into the theories that I have?
Heck yeah.
I don't have any like we were talking about, which is very interesting, and I like that theory a lot, actually. But what could be the actual cause of spontaneous human combustion, you ask?
What
I
could be
have
the cause?
4 theories for you.
Okay.
The most agreed upon is called the wick effect. So this is when something ignites the clothing on a person's body, causing damage to the skin. The opening in the skin allows for fat tissue to melt into the clothing, the body acting almost as a candle and the clothing as a wick. So I don't think I go into this, but there was a study done where a scientist or a man took the body of pigs, some pigs that had already been butchered or killed. And what he did was he dipped cloth in acetone. So this had to do with something about the acetone effect of alcohol or whatever it was. He dipped cloth in acetone, put it on the pigs' bodies, and it created the wick effect. I don't know that the damage that was caused to the bodies was the same as what happens in the spontaneous human combustion, but he thought that this helped to prove that SHC is actually the wick effect. So your skin or your fat tissue melting, and it can extend over a long period of time because the flames are just feeding off of that adipose tissue.
And I could kind of believe that, just because, and I don't even know about acetone, but if let's say you're an alcoholic or something like that, and you're just gone, and you get alcohol on you, spilt some on yourself, maybe it's been spilt on you, and then something is able to get it to go.
One little spark.
Yeah. I could maybe see that, but I still have a hard time imagining that it could get that hot.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
The amount of heat and the damage done to the bodies is the really curious part to me.
Yeah.
And I know, like, some things, kind of like that, when you talking about the experiment the scientists did, I know there's some chemicals and stuff, like, if you have them on a rag, you're not supposed to throw them in a normal trash can because there's a chance that they will spontaneously combust. I think, like, boiled linseed oil and a few other things. People have started shop fires and stuff, fires in their garages by throwing away these rags, and as they sat in the trash can, they'd ignite and start fires that way. So
I've seen, and all of this is so random, but like static electricity, literally just your clothes having static could ignite a flame.
Well, I mean, especially if you have, I don't know, some form of flammable material, or especially flammable material on. If you've got like some untreated cotton,
and
or
a lot
something.
of the people the clothing that they wore back then, very extremely flammable, because now
we've got all
everything is
kinds
made
of
out of
bullcrap
different,
on.
made out of different material blends and stuff. But even I think in Mary Reister's case, her nightgown that she had on was very flammable.
Yeah. And that's maybe why it happened more often back in whenever, it's because they didn't have flame resistant or whatever clothing. And it was just straight up.
just more likely to catch on fire and go up in flames.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. Especially since a lot of these happen in a kitchen too, I noticed. Like two of the stories that we talked about were in a kitchen. So I could definitely see where maybe cooking something, warming something up, whatever, and it just
one little spark.
Yeah.
So the other three theories that I have come from a parascientist. So it's kind of like pseudoscience, but it's different. It's called parascience. Not really for sure all the ins and outs
it's
of
like
that.
chiropractic.
But yeah, let's get on to some chiropractors.
Yeah.
The man is named Larry Arnold. He actually has a book, and it's called The Mysterious Fires of a Blaze. We might put that in our description, maybe.
Yeah, link that. I might have to read that. That actually sounds interesting.
It is cool. He talks about spontaneous human combustion, and he has 3 theories regarding it. These are all of his own theories. He's done research on them, and he's put it into a book. So the first is subatomic pyrotron theory. Whenever I talk about this stuff, it makes me feel like I'm like Tony Stark or something in the Avengers. Basically, the smallest particles in the atom's nucleus are called quarks. When there's a small, powerful neutral particle, it's a smaller version of a neutron, but it's neutral particles, but even smaller than that. They directly hit a quark. So the little tiny miniature neutrons hit a quark, and when that happens, it causes something like a Hiroshima effect.
Yeah, it's like nuclear fission.
So like
bomb,
chain reaction of as they're
You would
all
know
coming
about that.
apart.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Just
that's
wanna
not racist at all.
Just want to make sure.
I know.
The second,
It's because I
made sure
watched
to
the
look at you
Oppenheimer
directly.
movie, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
So, a Hiroshima effect. Basically, 2 things inside of an atom, which there are probably trillions of inside of the human body. Just in one atom, 2 random things hit directly, and it causes this Hiroshima effect, like
Pretty
a
much
bomb.
the splitting of an atom. Yeah,
Like an atomic bomb.
The chain reaction tears the body apart.
It's insane. The second is called Kundalini. Not well known here in the West, but apparently it's an energy that flows up and down the spinal column that can become unbalanced. It can become unbalanced by stress. They say that you can cause...
Is this the different thing? Is this the different cores? Is that what we're talking about?
Very pseudoscience-y
This
sounding to me.
it is. Meditation can affect it. So basically, whenever the Kundalini, if that's how you say it, is out of balance, it can cause extreme internal temperatures, burning or incinerating mostly the torso. So he thinks that this could be another theory that becomes off balance in your spinal cord, and then it causes this extreme heat that mainly burns up just the torso, middle portion of the body, leaving the extremities alone.
So you're saying that if you can't handle your liquor, And if
you
your
got bad
energies are put
vibes.
off, your tortellini is about to turn you into
Tortellini.
damn.
The pasta,
Yeah.
tortellini.
Yeah.
Make sure to avoid that.
I mean, heck, dude. I'm not touching it.
So the last one is cartography of combustion. This one was very confusing to me because mentally I can't picture it. But pretty much this is different alignments geographically where anomalies are likely to be found. So geographically in these certain areas,
Weird things happen.
weird things happen. For example, spontaneous fires somehow occur relating to the Earth's energy. He used geophysical energy as his term. But if you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time where the geophysical energy is bad.
You said this guy's a scientist?
I
Like
said-
accredited or
Parascientist.
parascientist? Okay.
Yes.
So he graduated from a community college. All right. This, I'm gonna be real. I could maybe, and I have a really hard time believing the whole nuclear option. I don't think I believe this guy. I don't think I'm
I
just
don't
gonna
think this
come out and
guy's
say it.
right.
I don't know if he knows what he's.
If I had to
think
pick out of
energy's-
his theories, the Hiroshima effect would be the one that's most likely. But the one that's most interesting to me is the geophysical one.
That
I
you
like
just
the idea. I think energies are something that's definitely there.
And it's
I don't
hard.
know.
I don't understand how people could really study it and actually
Yeah,
make
that's
sense
the
of
thing.
it.
I don't. There's. It'd be hard to measure something like that. I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure he's just. They're theories, so I'm sure he's kind of spitballing a little bit, but.
But I mean, who's to say that he is wrong? We have no idea if SHC really is a real thing. It
Yeah.
could be something that we couldn't even. I mean, it could be godlike. I mean,
Yeah.
we could never
Something
comprehend.
we just don't understand.
Yep.
Yeah.
You drank too much liquor, you go to hell.
Yeah. and you're and SHC
And we're
is
making
just
it
you
happen
going straight
quick.
there. Yeah.
You get a little taste
Yeah. The
before
opposite
we
of
drop
being
you
arrested.
down.
Those poor little old ladies.
Yeah. I like the energy idea. You know, that's kind of something.
It is.
Well,
cool.
I mean, and people seem to share. Like, I know people that have been to like battlefields and stuff. Some people say when they visited the Alamo, that they had like a feeling of like you can kind of understand something bad happened here, or like people that visit the Civil War battlegrounds, Gettysburg, and stuff like that. Antietam, I believe that there's a lot of people that share the same feeling. Whenever they're there, they feel like you can. They say the energy is like
Different.
negative.
Yeah, the
like,
walls
you
have
can tell.
memories.
Yeah, stuff like that. So
The
that's
interesting
the
ones is when
energy
people
thing is-
don't know what's happened in an area and you take them somewhere and they're like,
Like,
oh,
oh,
I
hell
feel
no.
very-"
Feels weird
Yeah,
here.
get me out of
Yes.
here.
And I think that probably is a true thing. It could just be areas where there is very.
Negative things
yeah.
that have happened, and they just kind of stick there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a
interesting.
cool idea. Like you said, I don't know. I don't think you'd ever be able to prove
No,
genuinely in
I
a
don't see
scientific,
it.
but
If it is the wick effect, which may be the most likely, it is like you said, just understanding how the temperatures could get that hot to do that and not damage everything else.
if I were to put money on it, I'd think it's the wick effect of everything that,
That
we
seems
talked
to
about.
be like the most like concrete, anchored in reality answer. But it is the thing like how could just burning fat, disintegrate bone and stuff. And then for the wicking effect kind of implies that it's taking a little while for the burning to happen. So then you're like, well, why is everything in the area around the body not seeing the repercussions of that continuous heat? Because whenever you see something that's like the police officer saying, or the sheriff or whoever it was in the Oklahoma case said that like 3 or 4 feet away there's plastic and stuff that didn't melt, that makes you think it was like something that happened extremely quickly, where it was like a flash of extreme heat that wasn't there long enough for the
Environment to
burnable
be damaged.
consumables and stuff in the area to notice it.
Which
That-
is so
that
hard to
makes more-
comprehend.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes more sense to me. Like one quick,
Just like the lady on the
extremely hot flash.
Pile of straw.
Yeah.
Straw is so flammable.
Yeah.
Here's another thing too. how so, and there will be people in these stories like in the house as well. So either these people are already dead whenever they light like that, or they just decide that whenever they feel their insides catch on fire, that they're just going to stand in that exact same spot.
So that
It's
was
kinda
something
hard to-
argued about
Yeah.
because a lot of these people were either alcoholics or like Little Miss Mary. She had taken 2 sleeping pills before she was going to have her cigarette to go to sleep. She could have been knocked out and not been able to respond. If you're an alcoholic and you've drank so much, you're not going to be able to move or respond.
Yeah, they might have all been asleep or dead
Yeah.
I guess that's true.
before the combustion happened.
Which I feel like would be the most likely because, like you said, if someone is burst into flames and they have long enough time to they're going to try to
like they're
run or
aware,
put themselves
you'll
out
hear
or
something,
or they're
see
going to
some-
move from the
see
spot
signs
they
of
were.
a struggle.
Yes.
People don't just kind of, be like, oh well,
Yeah.
guess this
just
is it.
kinda Quit moving.
sit here.
And
Yep.
that's another thing that kind of seems to lend credence to it's an all of a sudden quick, fast explosion of whatever's happening.
Yeah.
This heat,
Which I kind of hope it is because I can't imagine dying like that.
They say burning is one of the worst ways to go.
Yeah, I hope that it is something that's instantaneous.
And I just have a hard time too, but I don't know. Where does all of that energy come from? Like, what is because every fire has to have,
Fuel.
Yeah. So where's this massive amount of just like flash, combustion,
Unless it isn't
energy
your
come
atoms. In your atoms.
from? I mean, maybe, yeah.
Or it's God.
Yeah, I mean,
I hope
that's,
not, but
Yeah, well, I don't drink. No, I mean, but seriously, the only other answer that I could see even be plausible, just due to the amount of energy required, is like on an atomic scale, like a mini nuke. You know what I mean? Essentially.
Spontaneous human combustion is also found in fiction as well. I use The Incredibles as our opener, but you can see it in the X-Files. You might have seen some of the X-Files, Wyatt. I know we used to watch stuff like that. But X-Files, South Park has an episode where they do something about human combustion.
I've seen it.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
We're watching it after this.
Heck yeah.
Amityville horror movies, The Fantastic Four. Riley really likes The Fantastic Four,
Yeah.
so there's that. Bleak House, which is actually interesting because Charles Dickens wrote that, Bleak House, and it was not too long after SHC became like an actual theory. And he made one of his characters who was an alcoholic.
Burst into flames.
In the book. So a lot of people were like, well, it's actually Charles Dickens' fault because he's going around lying and making stuff up. And he was like, there's are real cases before I wrote this. So here's him. Have you guys ever heard of the band called Spinal Tap? It's like a fake band. They do something with
I've heard of Spinal Tap.
spontaneous
I don't know
combustion.
anything about it, but I've heard the name.
Yeah. And then there's so many more. It scares and intrigues us, so it's put into media. It seems to be a very hot debate topic. For now, maybe just avoid drinking, smoking.
Yeah.
Don't forget to say your nightly prayers and maybe stick to less flammable clothing options. That'd be my recommendations to you.
It's all leather. You heard her.
Exactly.
Make sure you bathe in
Chainmail
acetone.
would work too.
No, just kidding.
But make sure to keep watching the Fear and Flame podcast.
That's all I have for you guys, so I'll close this out. Thank you so much for joining us in today's episode. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like and subscribe. We want to hear from you. Leave topic ideas in the comments or find our email in the description to send us your scary stories.
Don't
Find
burst
us
into
here
flames.
next time on Fear and Flame Podcast.
And that's all for tonight,
That's it, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Don't die.